My dad, Harold Becker, he goes by Hal, transferred from manager at Camden State Park to manager at Whitewater State Park in southeastern Minnesota when I was almost 5. Whitewater State Park was Minnesota's 18th state park. An article in the Winona Daily News in 1968, when Arthur Beth was manager, said Whitewater was one of the few self-supporting parks in the nation, and that it was Minnesota's second state park in total attendance. It wasn't just local people who were enjoying Whitewater. It was a hot spot for camping for people traveling coast to coast. That newspaper article said there's a 9-hole golf course with a clubhouse, trout fishing in the park area, a large natural swimming pool, a group camping area with facilities for 126 week-long campers, hiking trails with a trained naturalist as guide, outdoor movies, cabins for rent, and 2 privately operated concession stands.
I was one of the longest park managers of the Whitewater, except for Wayno Contola, who was the beginning. He was there for a long time, 20-some, 30-some years, and then I ended up being there for 20 years. So I liked it. And I think Wayno Contola, I know he did. He ended up at Itasca. He didn't retire. He ended up at Itasca State Park because he was good and they wanted him up there.
Itasca State Park is a beautiful state park. It seems more like a resort than the other Minnesota state parks, and its acreage is as large as a small city. Forest Inn was built by VCC workers, Veterans Civilian Conservation Corps. They were veterans of World War I. The left section of this building, which is now a gift shop, was a trading post and post office. This middle section was a soda fountain serving ice cream and soft drinks. And this section on the right was a recreation hall with an organ, the fireplace, and seating. Douglas Lodge has a restaurant, a room that looks like it's now part recreation room, part waiting room for the restaurant, and upstairs there are rooms to rent. If Itasca State Park is known outside of Minnesota, it's probably for Lake Itasca, which is said to be the headwaters of the Mississippi River. Hal loves to fish. He's still fishing at 84. And that's one of the reasons he applied for a job at Whitewater State Park. He had grown to love the park fishing there as a youth. He grew up about 30 minutes from the park. At age 36, Hal had the opportunity to follow in Wayno Contola's footsteps and interview for the position of manager at Itasca State Park. That post is the pinnacle of a career for a Minnesota State Park manager. Hal did want to live up north. He was owner and manager of a resort in Bemidji when he saw the ad for state park manager training. He declined to interview, partly because he loved Whitewater so much, and partly because it had remarkable staff and his supervisor was supportive.
The sign on the wall there facing the highway, right next to that,
Yeah.
it says gift shop.
Yeah.
I made that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll go get a picture of it. He also made this entrance sign at Carley State Park, and this entrance sign at Coffee Mill Golf Course in Wabasha, Minnesota, where he likes to golf and eat. Equal to fishing, Hal loves woodworking. Hal being the manager of the park, my family lived in what's called the custodian's cabin on the park property. It was built in 1935 by the Civilian Conservation Corps. It has a 3-car garage. 2 of the garages were used by us and 1 was used by the park. Hal used one of our garage stalls as a woodworking shop, and this is the park's shop. The park's shop had a pop vending cooler in it. It sat on the ground like a chest freezer. Being raised in a house that didn't have pop in it, it was hard to resist not spending my allowance on a pop. A new park shop was eventually built a few miles north where it is today. But back then, the park vehicles were stored very close to our house. 2 of them can be seen here in the background. And there was a gas pump close to where those vehicles are parked.
Firewood for sale. Wow. Yeah, we had that wagon. It was right up next. Well, it was up to the gift shop when it was an office.
Mm-hmm. The Winona Daily News said in 1963 that a dry oak wood bundle cost 25 cents. Park workers used to deliver wood free to campsites, but people were hoarding it, so they introduced a fee to control usage.
Chuck Lerner again. He was the park mechanic, I'll call him.
It's Mac with a wooden fish. When Hal saw that photo, he said he made that fish for Crystal Springs Hatchery, which raises trout for stocking waters in Minnesota.
We used to get frequent guests at Whitewater. Big time people, like the guy that's on TV all the time. And they'd come out there for programs or for advertisements, advertising clear water or something like that. And this would happen oftentimes. People would come in from Saudi Arabia just to go fishing for the Mayo Clinic, and so we'd get involved in that a lot. We were eligible for a national award one time. Us guys, all the park managers, or all of the managers of the facilities in southeast Minnesota, around Whitewater only, the Lewiston Forestry Station, and the trout fishing. Anyway, we had a group that we'd do things together. For the level of management and cooperating with all the employees too. Parks were heavy summertime employers. Fisheries were heavy wintertime employers. So rather than hiring 6 people at fisheries for 6 months and then putting them on unemployment, and us guys having guys on unemployment during the winter, hey, go back and forth. Saved the department tons of money.
I and other kids used to sit in these window openings on outdoor movie nights. One of those movies is where I learned when the mites go up, the tights go down. This building originally functioned as a kitchen shelter. It had 4 cast iron cook stoves. It was also built in 1935 by the Civilian Conservation Corps. In 1936, the shelter was expanded to include a storeroom and a concession. In 1945, it was expanded again to add more concession space. Hell had it run as a concession stand too for a few years. So this was another source for me to get some sugar to supplement my wonderfully home-cooked, garden-sourced meals. We have here beer nuts, double bubble, some gum when it used to taste good. I see peppermint, wintergreen, and spearmint gum, Lifesavers, popcorn, potato chips and Cheetos, and a pop machine. And I know there were candy bars and ice cream bars. Do you know why?
Predominantly because there's very little standing water. Breeding habitat required for mosquitoes. The creeks were flowing all the time. They're cold water. The springs were cold.
Was it empty naturally?
They probably had it drained.
Oh, really?
If there's a flood in the river, then they close the gate so that the dirty water doesn't go into the swimming pool.
Where's the gate?
Here's the river, and so there's a gate up here that you can open up, and it goes down here into the swimming pool. And there's a dam here,
Yeah.
back into the river. So it's just a big horseshoe.
I miss these beach platforms. At Camden State Park, I was too young to swim out to the platform, and I was jealous of the people who could. By the time I got to Whitewater in 1976, the platform there was gone. Look at that massively tall structure. It must be a slide. And there's a one-level platform next to it that looks like it's standing room only.
Looks like the stone that the stone crew put in there going up to Chimney Rock. About 5 guys that I hired to, because this trail was severely eroded, many thousands of dollars to hire a crew, a stone crew, to replicate what they did back in the CCC days. Truck all this stone clear from Winona, from the Bizant Stone Quarry.
This meadow used to be a very popular golf course with sand greens. It was originally in the park and more than financially self-sustaining. In 1963, one could golf for $1 on weekdays and $1.50 on weekends and holidays. At that time, George and Lorraine Leffler lived in this wood house that isn't there anymore. It served as both a house and a clubhouse for the golf course, and Lorraine ran the clubhouse. The golf course flooded in 1974 under manager Don Logan, and that flood water got 50 feet from the custodian's cabin. The golf course was reseeded in 1975 and was going to open, but before it could, it flooded again. And in 1976, it flooded again and closed down for good not having had been opened since the 1974 flood. Chuck Kartek and his family lived in that house for the first 2 years I was at Whitewater. He was Hal's first assistant manager there, and on duty the night of July 1st, 1978, when the call came from Rochester at the National Weather Service of a flood coming.
That bridge that we had there, it was big cables supporting it, and it was
Oh yeah, I remember.
waving all over, and I was pulling nails out, and you can't have a wood structure undulating that much on a bridge. Terrible design. But it worked. Got people across it for a few years. There's Precipice Bluff right behind it.
Online is a copy of the application that is submitting these historic buildings to the National Register of Historic Places. It's dated 1989. The description for the custodian's cabin says the residence is built entirely of stone, except for the rear kitchen facade where rough-hewn clapboards are employed above the sill line. Notable exterior features include heavy segmental arches over the front and rear bedroom windows. And an entrance light which is shielded by a stone canopy. The living room features a dramatic open-beamed ceiling which rises to 14 feet at its peak. A massive stone fireplace is located along the north facade and is flanked with bookcases and cabinets. The fireplace opening is capped with a segmental arch. A rough-hewn mantel runs the entire width of the room. This Christmas party was for employees of the park at our house. I'm including these photos in the video in case anyone who recognizes these folks wants to reminisce. At some point we got a Commodore PET computer and kept it in my brother's room. Here's an orphaned pet fawn in the living room. It was there during the Contola's time. About a year and a half later, the Contola boys, John and Calvin, had 2 more orphaned pet deer. My brother and I got to raise orphaned fawns too, at Camden State Park, where we lived just before we moved to Whitewater.
That was installed through a project through the United States government.
Hal is referring to that white box above the door. I called it the flood box, and it went off. In 1978, there was a big flood at the park, and as I remember it, it started at night, so my dad had to rush about getting ready to get outside and wake up the campers.
We went out and we immediately started evacuating all the camps, and they had to be out in 30 minutes. To get up by the office, went around to each campground. Yep, to each campsite. Probably weren't full that night either. So, well, then in Cedar Hills, they were okay. they could stay. Although we told them, we blocked the road so they couldn't go down the highway, but they didn't have to leave their campsite. So the ones down by Gooseberry Glen, they had to move out. I wrote a little article one time. It's called "You Have 30 Minutes." It's in the Conservation Volunteer. Pretty soon, daylight comes and people everywhere watching the water. And I can't remember what time it quit raining. Anyway, everything was under control. People were calm by that time.
In the days following the flood, a part of our driveway up by the house became a lost and found for flooded out camping gear.
They helped us put in the flood warning system, where we had rain gauges and radio systems, like up there at Irv Blitzweitz's farm, and then one on the farm, another farm near the St. Charles, and another farm up in the North Branch. So if it rained heavy at those places, it would come down to the park office at that time and all be stored on a computer. And if any rains exceeded the amounts of rain that would not allow a flood, it would send a signal to us, or would call us, or would send an alarm off. Yeah. And it wasn't a very good system, but it was a brand new system, and it worked. Then the National Weather Service, a good friend of mine, Ben Alman, he was a weather in charge of the weather system there, and he were getting new computer systems all the time too. New systems to warn of flood dangers and gauges and stuff all over. So then we didn't need that stuff for the park anymore. So it was allowed to become isolated, I guess, or didn't need it. Took it apart. Well, it was in the floodplain, so it always got water in this. I think there were 3 cabins down there, maybe more. A year or two before I got there, they had floods, and they decided to get rid of those cabins. And so we were ordered to tear them down if there was any standing.
There were 5 of these state-operated housekeeping cabins. When Mrs. Contola was there, she operated them. In 1963, they rented for $7 a night. A campsite was $1 a night. In 1954, a reporter for the Winona Republican Herald found the Contolas in cabin number 5 painting to get ready for the opening of the trout season. Also, there had been a tornado and the park was being restored. The Contolas wanted to make the park the most attractive park in the state, and they were willing to work 24 hours a day. This building was submitted to the National Register of Historic Places as a combination building. It had restrooms, a laundry, a kitchen, and a utility area. Today it has restrooms in the section on the right and 2 showers with dismantled plumbing. The sign above the door on the left says camper shelter. It has 2 picnic tables, a refrigerator, and an original stone cooking area. When I was young, the lead interpretive naturalist, Dave Palmquist, had interpretive exhibits in this camper shelter. The Winona Daily News reported in 1963 that only 5 Minnesota state parks had naturalists: Whitewater, Gooseberry Falls, Interstate, William O'Brien, and Itasca. Hal took a picture of the flyer of Dave's winter 1983 winter programs. In January, there's a ski trip at the historic Monarch House, an eagle field trip, a caving field trip, and a wild turkey activity on snowshoes. In the newspaper article announcing Hal's retirement, it says for every program that Mr. Palmquist accepts, Becker stated that he has to turn down at least 7 others. A huge attraction for the park was, and still is, the group camp that's right along the Whitewater River. Through Dave's efforts, it became the most used group center in the Minnesota Parks Division. Dave and a teacher from the Kingsland School District, which was then known as the Spring Valley School District, came up with the idea of school kids spending a few days in nature at the camp. The Kingsland District kids first went in 1965, so they are coming up on their 60th anniversary. The Winona Daily News reported in 1856 that the lodge at the group camp was nearing completion. The group camp is in a non-flooding area, but a tornado had destroyed the original buildings. The lodge is made of knotty pine from trees in Carley State Park that were killed by hail.
I was the designer of that. Whitewater, we had frequent floods. Rather than putting in bridges, why don't we just put in stepping stones across the creek? If the water comes up, poof,
Yeah.
all the flood debris and everything goes over the top of the stepping stones. So these are just about 6 feet long, made out of concrete, and spaced so that water can go through it, trout can go through it. Everything's natural, except the steps. And I don't know if they're still there.
This is Whitewater on Google Maps.
Yep. Okay.
And here's the group center.
Yep.
And here is Stone Stepping Bridge. This picture was taken 6 months ago.
Wow.
It's still there.
Wow. Holy smokes. Well, that makes me feel really proud. Wow.
I'm gonna go find it.
Okay,
Like
when you come up
4
to the
days
group
ago.
center here, you'll gotta park your car here.
Yeah.
Just walk through. Just go over by the hillside there and walk through the camp and
All
walk
right.
upriver on a trail
All
that's
right.
still there.
All
And you'll
right.
come to that crossing.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go find it.
Wow.
Don't actually walk through the group camps if it's being used. There's a very small parking lot that fits about 6 cars just in front of the bridge that leads back to the group camp parking lot. So park in that tiny lot and walk over the bridge, and then there's a marked trail that leads back to the river, and one branch goes left and one branch goes right. The branch that goes left goes to the stone stepping bridge. I filmed this walk twice because I lost the footage from my first shoot, and that first shoot the group camp was being used, so I had taken that trail around the edge. It was serendipitous that I lost the footage because when I went back to get it, the group camp was empty.
They were up at the group center crossings
Oh, okay.
on a trail crossing.
All right.
There was one down on the campground downstream from the picnic area. And we had one up on Trout Run. 3 areas where we had those. Where we had a nature trail. We had to get across the creek. And they worked well too.
Okay.
I had them made, I should
All right.
say,
All right.
without permissions. Although I shouldn't say it wasn't without permission. We made it in conjunction with the Division of Fisheries. They thought it was a good idea.
Oh.
So we worked real well with the other departments in Whitewater. Forestry, fisheries, everybody. Minerals, waters. Yeah, we made them flat. We made them. We were working with several things. You can see that they're sloped on the front edge, and that's to encourage water and debris to go up and over them. So that's a pretty cheap crossing there. They're building a bridge, which is probably only going to last maybe a year before high water would come again and wash it out. But those things stayed. Once in a while, we might have had to readjust some of them. It sort of tip or, you know, but they weighed. Each one weighed so much that they stayed pretty. It was pretty stable.
This photo of the bridge is from my first trip down on June 19th. I lost all the video footage of that trip, but I do have some pictures. I went back the second time 11 days later on June 30th, and I think there was a flood in that time.
So that thing's been there for 40 years. Now, if there had been a bridge there, it would have been repaired, replaced, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And those stone things there that we made there are all out of concrete. And I think it was very successful. Anything we had. And there we shared big equipment too. You know, if it's fisheries or forestry had these big equipments, and we'd get to use them sometime if we could. Of John Latsch State Park, I was responsible for putting in those trails. I didn't do it, but I mean...
The stairs, yeah.
Okay. Tell you a little story. Kids that went to... They get in trouble, and then they'd get assigned to work for free, well, even for money, at these places, at parks and fisheries and so forth. So here these kids working, building these steps, big cribs, where you put gravel in them and then put one on top of the other and build steps all the way up the top of John Latsch Park, that hill up there, Mount...
Some kind of program.
Mount Charity.
I forgot the program.
I thought, geez, I feel sorry for them kids. They got to haul these things, build them, and then they'll haul them up there by hand. Plus, it's taken them a long time. I called up the enforcement and I says, can you guys do work for us? Yeah. I says, I'll pay for it. About $400 an hour for this helicopter. And it came all the way down from northern Minnesota to Whitewater to John Latsch. And they'd haul all these cribs up this thing and dump them at various, all from the top to the bottom. And then the crews, all they had to do was move them just a few feet and then install them. They were happy. I was happy. One time I went up there trout fishing. Caught some nice 15, 16 inch brook trout up there. They weren't stocked. And there were big articles about it in the fisheries magazines. Larry Gates wrote it up. Anyway, I went up there fishing. Hey, there was a stream was probably 3 foot wide, and there was a log running lengthwise of it right along the bank. And I had a night crawler, and I put it on this log. And then I just sort of kept dragging it over to the water. Bam! The brook trout caught the damn thing. Wow, surprised me. I'll never forget that trout.
Hal's retirement article, it says, at age 58, Becker knows he's leaving a crew that's been there longer, but he has a few pretty good reasons. For retirement plans, he wants to be a drifter, along with his wife, Lana. And they did drift for a few years in an RV. And they crossed off their bucket list a trip to Germany.
I was manager there for over a year before I got bit by my first mosquito. Then I slapped him so fast he was on my arm that I thought, gee, I killed the only surviving mosquito in the park.